The following is a presentation of WLCN 96.3 FM and WLCNonline.com.
Good morning and welcome to Viewpoint, your program of personalities, politicians, and perspectives. Thank goodness we leave the politicians out, otherwise I'd start getting on their back and I'd be...
Well, we might not stay in the air too long.
No, I was going to say I'd be fired.
What about that?
Perhaps in jail with some of those dudes. Anyway, we always try to start Viewpoint with a kudo. And certainly we were inspired this morning to put out a kudo out there. Let's pay close attention out there, mothers and dads, to retired teachers. One of our guests this morning is a retired teacher, very, very respected in her profession, in her community, and I'm going to let Lloyd take care of the introductions there, so go right ahead, sir.
Okay, well, we have with us representatives from the Illinois Beef Association. If you're watching on camera, on the left is Betsy Pesch, the retired teacher to which Mr. Gossett was referring. She is a board member with the Illinois Beef Association, and on the right, Josh St. Peters, Executive Vice President. So, folks, thanks for being with us, and happy Beef Month.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to be here. I appreciate the chance to be on the program.
We're happy to have you with us. This is something that Ma and Pa on the street just don't think about very much. What is the Illinois Beef Association, Josh?
The Illinois Beef Association works on behalf of the industry in the state. We're a trade group, but we have a two-pronged mission. The first mission, our priority, is working with the family farmers across the state who raise the cattle and produce the beef. And we have about 2,500 farms across the state that we count as members to be part of our association and involved in our activities, really spread out throughout the entire state. The other prong of our mission is to promote beef to consumers. So many folks know us by our Beef It's What's for Dinner campaign, that tagline that you see and hear. That's a really important part of what we do in our industry to raise awareness. We have a whole new generation of people running households now that have, maybe grown up in environments where they haven't cooked as much as prior generations. And so we do a lot of work under our Beef It's What's for Dinner campaign to give tips and tricks on how to cook beef product, different cuts of beef to use, and the importance of healthy, lean protein meat like beef in your diet.
Mrs. Pesch, how did you get involved in this? You were a high school ag teacher. Let's go there just a minute. You taught these kids for the agricultural business for a fair number of years. And how long have you been retired now, Mrs. Pesch?
I've been retired 9 years now. It's gone very quickly.
Yes. Well, you know, what was always interesting with Mrs. Pesch is she was in a man's world as an agriculture teacher in the high school level. And, boy, did she put out some marks for somebody to follow. Very, very enthusiastic for the job, obviously. Much respected in her area. And so we're glad to have you with us, Mrs. Pesch.
Thank you.
How did you become a member of the Illinois Beef Board?
Well, I've always been one of these people that I want to be involved, whether it be committees or organizations or whatever. And when I retired, this kind of opened the door. And I'm in a district where we've got districts through the IBA, and there was an opening. And I thought, well, why not? So I started talking around with the current executive VP at the time, and then Dr. Jay Miller up here at Timbercrest. He was a current board member at the time. So I ran some ideas through him, and he says, might as well go for it. So I went through the proper steps and channels, and the next thing you know, bing, bang, boom, here I am. So I've been on the board, I think, about 5 years now, I believe, and it's just been a great experience. I've learned a lot, and it's kept me out of trouble.
Yeah, you don't have any time to go to Old Joe's, do you?
No. I do try to find alibi every once in a while. So, but yeah, it's just been a fantastic experience, and I enjoy it because I love beef cattle, and this just fits me to a T.
Go ahead, Jay. Sir.
Or Lloyd, whatever my name is. So you talked about several different functions of the Illinois Beef Association, education, advocacy as far as legislation and political types of things. I might be jumping ahead here a little bit, but in the news lately has been Proposition 12 out in California and all the implications that could have and the ripple effect. Have you folks been involved in that to any degree? And for the listeners who may not know, can you tell us a little bit more about what Proposition 12 is?
Yeah, Proposition 12 is something that all of us in the agriculture industry here in Illinois have been paying close attention to. From a livestock industry standpoint especially, it's been important. Proposition 12 came out of California, and it's really an issue that on the surface looks like it's focused on pork production because the issues in California have centered around the way that hogs may be raised on farms and a state's ability to regulate and control that. But really for the entire livestock industry, it's been something to pay very close attention to and thinking about the way that we raise animals and care for animals with welfare at the center of what we do and the most important aspect of what we do in producing protein for consumers. It ended up being an issue that, as I said, initiated in California, but was litigated to the extent that it was presented before the Supreme Court, and so we're still awaiting final ruling out of the U.S. Supreme Court on what the decisions will be about the state of California's rights to regulate livestock production and the way that hogs are raised in that state. But everybody in the industry is very concerned. I would say, from our vantage point here in Illinois, and especially within the cattle industry, we feel like we have a very compelling case to consumers about the importance of welfare, because in Illinois, our producers all go through a beef quality assurance training program every 36 months. I think we've all known in our farming communities and our small communities where we've had the pleasure of knowing farmers and farm families that these are people who work tirelessly to care for their animals, to provide for their animals, and do best for those animals on their farms. But as we get out in the world and interact with more folks who are further and further removed from the farm, it's important that we're telling our story and engaging. And for us in Illinois, in the beef industry, that beef quality assurance program, by its very name, or BQA as we'll often quote it, helps bring those practices to the forefront about the way that we care for our animals on the farm, the way we transport our animals to and from the facilities where they end up being harvested for beef. And everything in that beef quality assurance program is centered around making sure that the welfare of the animal is the number one priority, and a very close second behind that is the highest quality, safest, reliable beef product that goes to consumers, whether it be at the grocers, at the local meat locker, or at a restaurant where it ends up on your plate.
Mr. St. Peters, have you seen a rise or a fall in the number of people who are raising beef cattle since you came aboard with the Illinois Beef Association?
That's a great question. In the last couple of years, we've seen a decline across the U.S. in the number of cattle operations. We often talk about the economic cycle.
Driven?
It is, yeah. We talk about the economic cycle of the cattle industry, and we've been at the low point. We're coming out of that now. Today, the economics of what cattle bring, whether they're purchased at the sale barn or on contracts to a packing plant, is in a much stronger position than where we were 24 months ago. We really came through a very tough time because we were hitting the low point of the cycle and also experiencing the crunch of the pandemic. And as we all recall, probably, unfortunately, during the pandemic, we had some times where when businesses shut down, that included processors, that included all the places that harvest beef. And so we had some shortages out in the marketplace where meat wasn't always available on the shelf at all the time. What that meant for our producers was that we had excess supply. We had more cattle than we could move through the value chain, and it just further forced a low in the marketplace. And so I feel very confident that we've been climbing out of that, and the economic outlook from folks who are way smarter than me, the trained economists in the industry that we work with, is that we'll continue to see some optimism here in the months ahead, and likely over the next year or two as we continue to climb out of that. And so fewer families in Illinois that may have cattle on feed, but one of the things we have seen is an increase in the number of head on feed for farms that do. So some folks are seeing this as an opportunity to expand at the low point of the cycle, looking to profitability ahead. And we do a tremendous amount of work in our association with junior beef association folks, so working with high school ag teachers like what Betsy was, to work with 4-H and FFA kids across the state, and then stay involved with them in our young cattle women's programs, where we're really focused on those producers between the ages of 21 and 40, so that as they're coming back to the farm, or maybe they're working in their career. Like Betsy's a great example of someone who had a very successful career as a teacher, but also continued a thriving cattle operation during all those years teaching as well. And so in Illinois, we really want to strive to keep people involved in the industry, and that gives us a chance at times to bring folks back in that maybe grandparents had cattle on the farm, and it's skipped a generation, but now as young people come back, we can get cattle back on those feedlots and in those barns.
Mrs. Pace, I'm sitting here about half awed about the communications dollar. So you taxpayers, boy, sit back and say, boy, we're doing all right. Here's a gentleman who went to the University of Illinois and had communications as a part of his curricula, and by George, he sure heck succeeded. So we appreciate your being with us, Josh. Let me ask you, is there a breed of choice across the state for people who are raising beef?
Oh, that's it. You said we weren't going to talk politics. I heard you say that in your opening remarks, because that does get political. I mean, there's a number of breeds of beef cattle, really, that each bring their own utility, their own function on the farm. And so you see a lot of black-hided cattle, black cattle that tend to be Angus influence, or more and more in Illinois. We see Simmentals as black cattle as well. But we've got tremendous amount of diversity in our industry. So Betsy is noted for her involvement not just in our beef industry and the Beef Association, but also as a Hereford breeder, those red and white cattle. We've got a lot of Shorthorn families, Charolais families. I mean, all these different breeds that the untrained eye just knows them for their color differences, what you see out in the pasture. But each of those breeds has its own heritage behind it that brings a different attribute to the beef animal that they end up being in the end.
The backyard cooker. Is there a better breed, in your opinion, for the grill, for the average Joe? But Mrs. Pace is shaking her head no. Just raise them right and they'll be just fine.
As long as it's beef. I mean, you want it tender. You want some marbling in it. But just give me a good old ribeye or T-bone, and I'm in heaven.
So I suppose here in Lincoln Logan, the best thing to do is maybe go to Charlie at the IGA and tell I want a grill Saturday night. What do I want?
Yep.
Yeah.
Ask their opinion.
Yep. I would say that's a good place to start right there. Yep.
Yeah. Those folks who work those retail meat counters are really important for us in the industry, because they have knowledge of what product they've got that day, what's come in that week, and the different cuts that are available. I mean, at most restaurants, we think about steaks, and there's a specific set of, everybody seems to have their preferences. Is it a ribeye? Is it a sirloin? Is it a strip steak? But in reality, there's a number of different cuts that are available. And at the retail counter, I mean, things like skirt steak have become more popular. And if you cook that the right way, if you know how to cook that, it's a tremendous meal, and it can be wonderful as a traditional steak on your plate, or you can slice it more thinly and top a salad with it as well. So a host of different options, and that's just one of dozens of different examples. And we've got a website, beefitswhatsfordinner.com, that's loaded with hundreds of recipes, and it talks you through the different cuts that are available, how to cook them, and so it gives you some conversation next time you're at the meat counter.
Lloyd, I'm sitting here entranced, and as usual, I forgot we have some sponsors. We're going to defer to them. Mr. Ash, when you're ready, sir. And right back live in the studios here at WLCN, high on the road at County Road 2250. Our guest this morning on Viewpoint, Mrs. Betsy Pesch, and she is a board member of the Illinois Beef Association, and Mr. Josh St. Peter's. Get that right there, St. Peter's and St. John. I don't know.
He's a saint either way.
Thank you.
He's vice president of the Beef Association, and as we sit down to the table, we don't think too much about where this comes from, but a lot of people put a lot of work in to put that steak or the hamburger in front of you at night or noon, whatever the case may be. So this is a very important job that Mrs. Pesch does, serving as a board member. And as a director, Mr. St. Peter's puts a lot of food on the table for you. And I asked a question a while ago, if there was a cow of choice or a bull of choice, whatever the case may be, for people to grill in the backyard, and he said, not really. Your territory runs from the entire state of Illinois, sir?
That is correct, yeah. We serve the entire state.
Boy, you've got a big job. K Road to Rockford, that's a lot of windshield time. By the way, speaking of windshield time, did they ever get that mess down 55 cleaned up? My goodness gracious. It must have taken them all night to clean that. That was a terrible, terrible tragedy up there. So, go right ahead, Mr.
Well, we've mentioned that May is Beef Month, so what kinds of activities or things does the Illinois Beef Association do to promote Beef Month in Illinois?
Yeah, so we're working across the state this month, especially with May Beef Month. We consider this the unofficial start to the grilling season. So hopefully everyone listening's had a chance to dust off the barbecue grill already. If not, we feel like, especially the shift in weather, the winds finally died down a little bit here, and some warmer temperatures. It's a great chance to fire up the grill, whether you want to do charcoal or propane, or we see more and more of these pellet grills being used. You can cook beef so many different ways, and again, cuts of choice. We're out working to promote that across the state with a number of activities, and Betsy's involvement here with the Heartland Beef affiliate has got members doing a number of activities right here in this own part of the state.
On May 13th, Saturday morning, coming up here at the Lincoln Farm and Home, we're going to be giving away free ribeyes sandwiches. And Heartland Beef Alliance, we were awarded a $1,000 grant through the IBA, and so I'm going to purchase, I think, a little over 200 ribeyes I can get, and I'm getting those through Atlanta Locker, and so hopefully we'll have them ready around 10:30, and come out to Lincoln Farm and Home on May 13th that morning and get yourself a free ribeye, as well as some grilling tips and those types of things, some literature to...
It occurs to me maybe we have to Sheriff Landers get somebody out there to direct traffic.
Yeah. I'm sure once the word gets out, it'll go pretty quick.
Yeah. Yes, you'll have a lot of traffic out there.
Yep.
By the way, those folks have done a nice job in that their signage and so forth in that store.
Absolutely.
That's a nice store.
New breath of fresh air. Yes.
Yeah, really is. So, Josh, is there one big challenge that faces you when you go to work in the morning? Is there a constant problem that you trying to solve, or is it change almost on a daily or weekly basis?
Yeah, I don't know that it would be a problem per se. It's probably more of an opportunity, but it's one of the things that I enjoy the most about this position as executive for the Beef Association in the 2.5 years that I've been here is education. We work with producers across the state who do a tremendous job telling the story of their family farm and of what they do there. But we have more and more people in Illinois in our population as consumers, or be it working with legislators and folks on the political scene in Springfield, or the local leaders even, who don't have experience on a farm. They don't have a background with cattle. And so that creates an opportunity for education and telling the story of what we do in our industry and why it's so important to not just U.S. consumers, but really people around the world. I mean, we're right here today in truly what is, I believe, is the breadbasket of the world as far as being able to raise crops that we feed to the livestock that become the protein on dinner plates for so many families in our country, but exported around the world as well. And so it's critically important that we're telling that story and raising awareness and educating, because without education, folks can't know and can't understand what it is we do on these farms.
648-5510. There's a number to call. You folks who like to stand in the backyard and grill a little bit. Our guest this morning, Mrs. Betsy Pesh, retired ag teacher, and a lady to whom many people doff their hats with respect for having done the job she has done in education, and Vice President of the Illinois Beef Association, Mr. Josh St. Peters. Boy, this fellow's knowledgeable, Mr. Ash. So, if you have any questions, maybe you're a wannabe griller in the backyard, here's your chance to find out how to search for the right beef and then what you do with it after you take it home. That's important. Has there been an increase in the number of farmers who specialize in raising beef cattle in this central Illinois area? There has been an increase. Yeah,
one of the things that we've seen that's become more common for us in this part of the state as folks who are selling local beef or freezer beef. I think it was happening before the pandemic, but especially during the pandemic, there were more people who were interested in buying local beef, and that's created additional demand. On our website, illinoisbeef.com, we have the local beef directory. So if you go to illinoisbeef.com and click the local beef directory, you can select your county, and then it will list the farmers in your county who are selling freezer beef at that time, and has their contact information so that you can reach out. And we found that that's been very popular both with the farmers and with consumers, because there are folks who are interested and gosh, I'd like to buy some beef, but don't know where to start. If you don't know a farmer, we talked about generational differences and kind of how times have changed some things, and that's one space that not everybody knows somebody who's got beef to sell like you used to, and we hope that local beef directory helps with that.
I'm sitting here thinking, I'm just out of the loop. When I was a kid, that we had a locker right behind the post office in Lincoln, and folks would rent space and they'd have their drawers and so forth. Is there anything like that in Lincoln now? I don't know. I'm not aware of it.
Not aware of.
Well, it was a real handy service. If you could afford one, you could buy a quarter or half of beef and have it processed, and then put it in your locker, and then go to it when you wanted to, 10 o'clock at night if you wanted to. So that's kind of an interesting thing that's going by the boards. Go ahead, Lloyd.
Well, we've been talking about May being Beef Month, and you mentioned education. One of the things, whether you're aware of it or not, you educated me today here. I hadn't thought about it, but it makes perfect sense. When we talk about a cattle farm or a beef operation, it's not just a single type. There are actually different types of operations that, again, I hadn't thought about it, but it makes perfect sense. Can you kind of tell us some of those different types of beef farms that are out there and what their functions are? Yeah,
we have a very diverse industry in Illinois, and so sometimes it's easy to take for granted or overlook that when we talk about a beef farm, even kind of drill down on that operation, there are some folks who the calves are born on their farm and they feed them all the way through till they go to the locker plant. But more and more of the operations are specialized. So we see a lot in this part of the state of cow-calf operations. So this time of year, a lot of those mama cows are out on grass with a baby calf alongside, and those farms will raise those pairs out on grass until later in the year when they wean that calf and they sell it as a feeder calf, a calf that's a couple 100 pounds at weaning, and then gets sold. Backgrounder or stocker operations then are kind of an intermediary type farm that buy those feeder calves and kind of get them through through their teenage phase, we say, and get them, grown up and ready where they would go to a feedlot or a finisher farm to grow them out all the way to market. And so we've got in different parts of the state different kinds of operations. So I was actually on a call this morning on my drive into Logan County, talking with a backgrounder who's putting together orders for his farm in Illinois, and wanted to check with a quick question. We've got, as you move north and get closer to where the larger packing plants are along Interstate 88, a number of those large commercial feeder farms. So they're buying calves in at 800 pounds, 900 pounds, and then putting them on a corn-based diet to get your corn-fed beef through, all the way to when they're harvested. So it's a very diverse industry, and we're fortunate that here in Illinois we've got plentiful resources like grain that's raised by local family farms. We've got a lot of grass to graze those cows on. We've got plentiful supplies of water. I mean, you see the terrible droughts and challenges they've had in the West and in the Southwest. We're pretty fortunate that even though we hit dry spells here in Illinois, and we do talk about drought and the reality of drought and dryness, we tend to have more water than some of those other parts of the country on an annual basis historically. And so it affords us a really great environment for raising cattle.
Go right ahead. He's just, I want to tell you, Lloyd, he's got me just sitting here in awe of the degree of sophistication. You think a steak is a steak is a steak. Well, that's not so, pretty obviously. And is there a breed of cattle that produces a better steak for your grill?
Well, I think everybody would tell you the breed they raise is the best one, and maybe it's a little bit tricky of me, but I'll say, well, let me try and tell you. If I can get a free meal out of it, I will. But no, I think part of that diversity is the different breeds that folks raise. We have plenty of folks in Illinois raising corn-fed beef. We've also got folks who swear by and do the grass-fed beef programs. We've got producers in Illinois that are certified through USDA for organic. There's a little bit of something for everyone. And that's important when we work with consumers, because consumers have preference for the kind of beef they want as well. And so we promote beef equally. As long as folks are putting a steak on the plate or a burger in their meal, then we're doing our job.
And I guarantee you, when you walk into any store with a person behind the meat counter is not going to be able to tell you whether that steak was grass-fed or corn-fed. There's no way in the world for a clerk to understand or know that. 648-5510. This is a very interesting morning. I'm just sitting here in kind of awe with how the ease of Mr. St. Peter's. He did a really good job in communications in college, let me tell you that. Betsy, is there a question that a person in Central Illinois would have for the Illinois Beef Association that would be meaningful to them?
A question?
Yeah. Or is there like a most common question you get asked quite a bit in terms of the association or beef?
Probably, I would say, and I think Josh alluded to this earlier, just our mission statement. In terms of my position, I'm on there to help educate and possibly teach, about the beef industry. And, of course, that comes with my background. But, my focus would be to let people know we're here. We're here to help, not just beef producers, but the consumer as well. And that, I guess, goes back to these free ribeyes. Not only are they getting a ribeye, but they're going to get some educational literature, maybe grilling tips or the nutritional value of beef. Okay, so, why is the Illinois Beef Association here? We're here to help beef producers, to get them through maybe some regulatory issues, but just to keep them on the go and to help our consumers out as well.
And the novice griller perhaps could find recipes that would be interesting to them on the website, Illinois Beef Association. IllinoisBeefAssociation.com, would that be it?
The best website for recipes is our beefitswhatsfordinner.com. It's a lot to type in there, but it's the name of our campaign. Beefitswhatsfordinner.com, and you can search all kinds of recipes. You can search by cut. So let's say you find a certain roast on sale at the supermarket, and you bring it home and go, "Gosh, what's the best way to fix this?" You can click right there on beefitswhatsfordinner.com by cut of meat and look at different ways to prepare it. And there's recipes on there that are easy crock pot and instant pot, kind of set it and forget it types things all the way through. If you're one of those folks who likes to spend a Sunday afternoon fixing a feast, you can find some recipes on there that'll help you get through a full day of learning to smoke a different cut of meat or grill and prepare all kinds of different ways at beefitswhatsfordinner.com.
No, that should be an interesting beef. It's whatsfordinner.com.
Yep.
So 648-5510. If you have any questions for Mrs. Pesh or Mr. St. Peter's, give us a call. They'd be happy to. They won't come and do your steak for you, but they'd be happy to tell you to prepare it and what to do with it once you put it on the grill. How long should it, an average cut of steak, how long should it go on the grill?
No more than a couple minutes per side. One of the things that's really important when we educate with beef is you never want to overcook it. That's when it gets tough. And
you had a rule of thumb. You just said no more than a couple of minutes per side.
Yeah, and it's going to vary based on how well you like your meat done and what the cut is that you have. But if you haven't cooked beef a lot, one of the things that's important to know is that beef, just because of the really the tissues and the makeup of the meat, it's going to continue to cook a little bit on its own once you take it out of the oven, once you take it out of the skillet, or once you take it off the grill. You'll see on these food shows and programs, they talk about letting it rest. Yeah. And the reason that chefs will tell you that is it's going to cook a little bit more on its own. So I always tell people who are new to grilling steaks, especially, you want to defer to the "I don't think it's quite done yet" side of things, because it's going to finish a little bit on its own, and it really does make a difference when you spend the money to buy a great steak at the store and take it home to grill it for you or your family or friends. It is absolutely worth letting it rest for about 5 minutes. At our household, one of the things that we do, and I've got two sons that are 14 age, where we're starting to teach them how to do some cooking and grilling, is we grill it out on the grill, we put it on a platter, and then we take it in and we just leave it in the microwave. So we don't turn the microwave on, but it's a great place to hold that heat and humidity and let it sit for a couple minutes and rest on its own, because that steak's going to finish cooking once you've taken it off the grill. And if you let it rest for a few minutes before you serve it, those juices and everything settle into it, and it's going to give you the most flavorful, savory tasting steak you'll have.
It occurs to me, sir, that a confirmed beer drinker has they been just getting near the grill because they should be busy cooking.
Yeah. That's a good point. So in your education part of your mission, obviously we're in a more rural area. Are there any particular challenges you face when you head to the more urban areas or the more heavily populated city type settings? Are there different types of things you do there that maybe you don't do in the more rural areas like Logan County?
When we're in the urban areas, we tend to run into some cultural differences as far as maybe the heritage of what folks grew up with as far as cuts of meat and ways to cook beef, which is actually an exciting opportunity for me. I grew up eating beef in a household where we always had beef in the freezer and cooked it, but I find those are chances to learn new ways to fix things or new cuts of meat that maybe I hadn't tried before. But we also do have more and more households where cooking maybe wasn't part of the upbringing, and so you're starting at some basics at times as well. And I think any chance that we get to educate and raise awareness, it makes people feel more comfortable with what they're cooking and gives everybody a better experience at home in the kitchen the first time that they go to fix a ribeye or a roast that maybe they would be intimidated by otherwise.
Mrs. Pesh, as a high school ag instructor, at what point in time in your career did grilling outside become more important to us?
Well, I'd say it's always been important. I can remember, grilling outside as a kid. My dad would fire up the grill, and away we went. So I think grilling's been around since caveman time. You know, just a different type of grill. You know?
So, is there a particular, as a consumer, is there a particular kind of a side of beef that you would look for when you went into, let's say, IGA?
I'm always, you know, I took some meats classes when I was in college, and so I'm always looking for marbling in meat, and those are those streaks of fat in the meat, not on the outside, but in between the fibers of the meat.
Ingrained in the meat.
In the meat. And so when I go to the grocery store and I'm looking for, you know, ribeyes or T-bones or New York strips or whatever, that's one of the first things I look for is the marbling in the meat, because I know that's going to give me the juiciness, the tenderness, you know, to help with that piece of meat.
Is there a favorite cut that you like to look for?
Oh, I still lean towards ribeyes. You know, I just mentioned ribeyes, T-bones, porterhouses. I'm on the high end of the hog here, you know.
Yeah, she moved up a shoulder or two.
Yeah. But I like my hamburger too. I mean, yeah, I like my hamburger.
One that I like to tell folks about that you can find in any grocery store, and if you grew up in a household that you had beef regularly, especially freezer beef, when we talk about chuck roast, I think a lot of folks think about chuck roast and roast with potatoes and gravy, which is a wonderful Sunday meal if it's prepared well, like most families have a recipe for it. It's tremendous. But a chuck roast is very well marbled, has a lot of flavor. It tends to be pretty affordable. There's something you can find on sale frequently. And chuck roast, if you grill it or roast it and then cut it into cubes, makes the most wonderful burnt ends. So you go to a lot of these barbecue places and you'll hear them talk about burnt ends from a brisket. Well, demand for brisket has made it a more expensive cut in the last 5 or 6 years, just because it's very, very popular now. You can actually replicate that same taste, and I think you can even get a little more tender by taking a chuck roast, slow roasting it, cubing it up, and then you throw it in your favorite barbecue sauce. Some folks like them really tangy, some folks like them sweet. It's one of those things, everybody's got their own preference. But then you finish those on a grill or finish them in the oven if you're doing it in the house for a few minutes. We've got a tremendous recipe for chuck roast into burnt ends on that website, beefitswhatsfordinner.com, and that's a really affordable way that you can feed a group of people. So I get that question from folks sometimes about if you ask me my favorite, I could talk all day long, but all the different recipes. But that's a great one that when you see a roast like that on sale and you want to do something different with it, and the number of times I've done that for groups when we've had friends over or family in town, and they're like, "Oh, this is the best brisket I've ever had," and it's actually a chuck roast that works really well.
Now, you mentioned brisket, you mentioned chuck roast and so forth. When a customer goes into a grocery store, would they be well advised to carry a little drawing so that you know exactly from whence this meat came on a cattle frame?
And sometimes you'll see those meat charts, you know, at grocery stores, but that's not a bad idea, you know, to look to see what the different wholesale cuts are and how they can be cut down into retail cuts and things of that nature. You know, I want to bring up something that my husband likes to do is he cans beef. Okay, so we'll go and buy stew meat and put it in quart jars, and then it requires a pressure cooker. But he'll can beef maybe 2 or 3 times a year, and that is instant. It's already cooked now, so all you got to do is open it up, put it in a pan, maybe with some potatoes or noodles or carrots or vegetables, whatever, and you've got an instant meal in less than 30 minutes.
It's not even 10 o'clock and I'm hungry.
Yeah.
That means we're doing our job.
Yeah, right. Well, is there a particular... Should a consumer have a particular goal in mind when they go in? Let's say they go into the IGA. I mention that because they give a lot of service to the community, besides selling good stuff. What should a consumer have in mind when they're going to purchase meat to grill?
I always say try something new. If you don't have a menu planned in mind where you know exactly what you're going in to buy, if you're just browsing to plan, try something new, because I talk to folks that Betsy and I both share the love of ribeyes, but if you haven't tried something like a flat iron steak before, give that a try, because you'd be amazed at one of the miraculous things about beef cattle is they can eat grass and upcycle it into the best tasting proteins, but you can get a little different flavor and a little different texture depending on the different cut of beef you try. And so try something different, and don't be afraid to look at some of those recipes, because beef by and large is pretty easy to cook with. Just know the cut, know the temperature you want to cook it to, or the color you like it cooked at, how pink you want that when it's done. I mean, obviously with ground meat, we want to cook that all the way through, but when it comes to steaks or what butcher will call those primal cuts, you get a temperature in mind and finish it out and try a new flavor, try something different.
So with the Illinois Beef Association, in addition to, we've been talking about some of the in-state issues, we talked about Proposition 12 in California. Does your organization have any dealings with things on an international scale, like other countries, as far as sales and other beef-related issues? We
do. We're actually part of a national organization. So the Illinois Beef Association is a member of the U.S. Meat Export Federation, or USMEF, and through the U.S. Meat Export Federation, we then have access to help promote Illinois farms and Illinois beef products all around the world. And the Meat Export Federation has offices in Asia and Europe and the Middle East, where they're working with whether it's grocery store chains there, retailers, or government entities in some cases that are buying U.S. beef and importing it. And then we also work closely. There is a team at the State Department of Agriculture that promotes the sale of live cattle and genetics from Illinois. And so we just had the chance to interact with a group that was in from Mexico buying bulls and heifers and get them out on some Illinois farms through the work of the Illinois Department of Agriculture and their international marketing team there. So it's really important. But that U.S. Meat Export Federation is actually a featured part of our upcoming statewide meeting. So May is our beef month, and we'll end it then the first week of June. On June 6th is our annual meeting on the state fairgrounds in Springfield. So June 6th, starting at 11 in the morning, we'll have a luncheon at the state fairgrounds for members and producers, and then an afternoon of seminars and presenters. So John Henners from the U.S. Meat Export Federation is going to be there to give an update on beef sales abroad and his forecast and outlook for what that will be over the next couple of years, because it's a really important part of our economy for the men and women who are raising cattle. That export market's important. We're also going to have one of the foremost economists in the cattle industry from Amarillo, Texas. David Hale is flying up to give his outlook on what he thinks the Midwestern cattle market's going to look like over the next year and a half. And we'll have the state veterinarian and some other folks joining me for a conversation on policies and what you need to know as far as regulations and updates on raising cattle on farms. And I'll share a little bit of news here. I'll let a cat out of the bag that Betsy has not shared, but also on June 6th, we recognize our IBA award winners. And news for your listeners is that our 2023 IBA Member of the Year is Mrs. Betsy Pesch. And so Betsy will be recognized on June 6th for what truly is her tireless contributions. Is a leader, Secretary Treasurer on our policy board for IBA, but all of her volunteerism through Heartland Beef, all of her volunteerism through the Illinois State Fair work she does. Most folks don't realize that Betsy is the coordinator and the muscle behind our ribeye corral at the Illinois State Fair at the Commodity Pavilion, which means it's a 12-day long run, and the last several years she's led that all as a volunteer. I mean, truly hundreds of hours of her time every year given to the beef industry. So we're thrilled to get to recognize her in her honor at our awards dinner that will happen that evening after the meetings wrap up. And so we invite anybody listening who's known Mrs. Pesh as a teacher, as a cattlewoman, and a leader in the agriculture community here to join us in her honor as the IBA Member of the Year on June 6th at our annual meeting.
And she also had the great idea to bring Joyce St. Peter's Award with us this morning. Those who know Betsy Pace are not a bit surprised to find out once again she has another little accolade, another little arrow in her cap. So with great respect, we appreciate your being here, Mrs. Pace. And Joyce St. Peter's, thank you for being with us this morning. 648-5510. I'm sorry you missed your chance, folks. Beef, it's what for dinner. Thank you very much for Viewpoint.
The preceding program is a presentation of WLCN 96.3 FM and WLCNonline.com.